Oh, well, Cara, thank you for taking the time to come on. Welcome. And, um, like I said before, just whatever you feel comfortable sharing, however you feel comfortable sharing it, um, feel free to do so. So basically, just, you know, jump right in. I know I just said your name, but, you can introduce yourself and then give us your story.
So I'm Cara. First of all, I'm a child of God in long-term recovery. It'll be 11 years, October 20th, that God wrecked my life in the best way. Anything I speak to about in like relation to my past is only to the glory of Jesus and that He has brought me through. I'm still a sinner and I've been saved by grace. But I have been set free from drugs. I was an IV drug user, addicted to the needle as well as the dope, opiates, cocaine mostly. But if I could fit it in my needle, I would. I was a garbage can in every sense of the word. Today, I'm free from dope, alcohol, sexual addiction, anxiety, depression, mental illness, so on and so forth. I don't have a drug problem. I have a me problem. I have listened to story after story of people who say, "Oh, I was set free and God took the taste out of my mouth." That isn't how my story went. I don't struggle with the desire to use today, but the road to get here was arduous. The Lord had to change everything about me in order for me to be successful in recovery. The program I went to might seem extreme, but I needed that discipline in order to undo the person that I had become. I needed help and you couldn't tell me nothing before the Lord did his work in me. I literally trusted no one, not even God, as much as I wanted to. So my story began when I was born in Pompano Beach, Florida. I was raised in a small town in Central Florida called St. Cloud. St. Cloud was my Nazareth. Nothing good came from there. People would literally get stuck in the clouds and never make it out alive. That almost happened to me. The enemy has been trying to take me out since I was a little girl. I never felt like I was good enough. I had repressed memories of being sexually abused, and no one believed me when it came out. My parents got saved and stopped partying. I was raised in church. I knew God, but I didn't believe He cared anything for me. I ran away at 14 and was removed from the home by child services. When I came home, things only got worse. I was smoking, I was huffing gas, drinking, just to escape the feelings I was having. I was also self harming a lot. I was burning myself and cutting myself. I attempted to take my own life for the first time when I was 16. I swallowed a bottle of phenobarbital.
Hmm.
A bottle of what? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Phenobarbital.
What's that?
I think isn't phenobarbital for seizures?
Yeah, it's a barbiturate.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my mom found me unconscious. She was a nurse, so she made me throw up and drink charcoal so nobody would find out. The next decade or so, I would sum up to having three kids by three different men and marrying the first one's dad, and not getting divorced from him until 2024. I stayed married. I partied, went to the club, slept around until I had my third baby. Before he was born, I was prescribed a medication for a cough that was combined. It was a combination of hydro and codeine. It was called Vicodin. It was like a cough medicine. And that's how my addiction began. When I was on that, I didn't feel anything bad. I felt happy. I felt like me, that energy. I wasn't sad anymore. And I had all this like energy. I felt like that I could be a good mom. So my vow was to never run out. I got my own script, but my tolerance kept growing and growing. So I started ripping off my mom. She was on blues, and on it goes. I found out I was pregnant with my third baby. I was in a relationship with that baby's dad. We had a good relationship, and I don't know if it was the drugs or the hormones or both, but I felt like I couldn't trust him after something that had occurred and he didn't have my back. Like I didn't feel like he was gonna be there for me. So I knew that I had my back. So I left and moved back to Florida and had the baby by myself. I had the baby
Wow.
addicted to opiates because I was afraid to detox pregnant. So I lowered my dose to keep me off sick. I started working at a hospital, but the pills were getting harder and harder to get. And so I was copping H in Orlando, which was probably like 30, 45 minutes from where I was. During this time, I lost my job. The dope game, became a full-time thing. I lost the house. I lost my job at the hospital. I left the kids with my parents without asking my parents. I told the kids what was happening. I was like, we're losing the house and everything. I'll be back for you and everything. And they waited for me to come back. My daughter would have always waited for me to come back. So when my parents told her that I abandoned them, that I dumped them, that was the word they used. My daughter, she never believed it. She knew that I would come back for her. Little did I know it wouldn't be until she was like 18 years old when I was able to get back to her. The father of my youngest came to pick up my son, and I was homeless after that. I was living in hotels mostly. I started driving for a dealer, and that's how I was getting my fixes. Someone shot me up for the first time, and I fell in love and didn't want to do anything any other way. Someone borrowed my car and lost it. We couldn't find it. So while I was on foot, a guy picked me up thinking I was tricking, I guess. He held a gun to my head and told me to take off my clothes. God was with me because I told the guy with tears in my eyes I would do whatever he wanted, just don't kill me, I'm a mom. And the guy took mercy on me, and he took me back, dropped me off. He didn't rape me.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Over time, I would catch a couple possession charges and try to get clean on my own, but I didn't want to do anything sober. Everything was easier when I was high. I met a guy in a halfway house, and we relapsed together. This is where I would discover the joys of crack. Not that it makes it any better, but I was an addict that would budget my dope. I couldn't understand smoking all the money you had. This guy smoked until he was broke, and then he would rob people and steal from family members to support his habit. I would stay with this dude for 4 years, and this would be my last long-term relationship to this date. I would never give a man the opportunity to control my life again. I'm shortening this a lot, but I was so traumatized by that relationship. I couldn't trust anyone ever again. We would get clean together, party here and there, but he promised no harm. He wouldn't do any harm. We moved the 2 oldest kids into a bigger house with a yard, and he would immediately relapse. I was scared for my kids, so I took them back to my parents. I couldn't live with myself if anything happened to them that I went through when I was little. I was hurting them in a different way, though, because they would grow up with abandonment issues. They would grow up really hurt.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
You okay?
Take your time.
That's the part that I have. That's still real. That's the real part right now that I cannot heal from, is what I did to them.
Yeah.
But I relapsed on pills and meth, and oh God, and the relationship got very abusive. One day he picked me up and dropped me on the top of my head, and I heard a pop. When I got up, I grabbed a kitchen knife out of the drawer because I was going to unalive him. I slammed my finger in the drawer and split it open and broke it. I started bleeding so bad, and so I threw the knife out the front window of the house. Later, he would call the cops after I left, and the knife was, the evidence for my assault arrest. The picture they would use for that mugshot was this picture of me awake for days, picking my face because I did meth, and they used that picture in every single mugshot to the very end.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of trauma that came from that relationship, and I promised the kids and myself I would never let anyone like that back into our lives. After we broke up, I was back out on the street in Kissimmee with no car this time. I attempted to take my own life again. When I got out, I moved into a trap house, and business basically came to me. I told the police when they would stop me that I was a housekeeper, and they couldn't prove otherwise. I was out there for several years. I was alone, so I got my jaw broken. I got hit with a 2x4, knocked unconscious. I didn't go to the hospital, not for the concussion. And it's all over dope. I was kidnapped like 3 different times and assaulted sexually. That I'm alive today is a miracle. One thing happened from the last relationship is that I could not trust anyone. but I would do whatever it takes to take care of myself. I was using more than $600 a day. I had burnout on my veins and would miss a lot. I was shooting crack when there wasn't any powder, and that was a lot on the street. There wasn't a lot of powder. It's all hard, you know. So I burned out my veins. I was like covered in abscesses and holes. I had one so bad on my foot that it was so deep. When I wiggled my toes, you could see the tendons. I almost lost my foot. They would
Wow.
have what was called TNT on Tuesday and Thursday nights. The police would, which made it harder to move around, make money, and that kind of thing. One night I was done. I just wanted to die. I was so tired. I had a gram of this raw powder. I went in the 7-Eleven bathroom. I shot it up in the bathroom. I went blind. The fan was so loud, it sounded like a helicopter. So I had to get out of the bathroom and I couldn't walk. So I literally slid down the wall outside the bathroom door until I could see again. I stood up and left my works in the bathroom, left everything there with a shoestring tied around my arms, and walked out of the store alive. I couldn't believe it. And then one night in 2012, I got stopped after a truck tried to pick me up. He was trying to pick up a prostitute. I tried to run him off, and the police surrounded me. I had a loaded rig on me that I dropped in the bush, and a taser on the on position. You know, because I had been messed up so much. You know, I had a taser just in case. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and so they came up, they patted me down, they took my taser, but they didn't have anything on me. You know, they didn't find the drugs or anything. So they're pretty dirty where I come from. So they charged me with possession of a weapon by a convicted felon, tacked on a battery of Leo, and use of a self-defense weapon on a law enforcement officer or firefighter. On paper, they made it look a lot worse than it was. So they let me out on probation, and I immediately violated. I would serve a year and a day in DOC from that charge. When I got out, I had the choice to go to a program, the same program I ended up going in 2 years later, or working in North Dakota in an oil field. So and they said they were making 6 figures out there. I was like, okay, cool. I'll just go out there and, you know, start working and stuff. It was cold there, and I'm from Florida. So I didn't work in the oil field. I got a job as a housekeeper. And I was cleaning a room one day, and I found a stash in my room that had been raided, and I relapsed. There were blues, and there was bags of meth and everything in there. So I relapsed on the blues, and I sold the meth. I started hustling then in the strip club. I was selling dope and playing blackjack and that kind of thing because I didn't dance. I wasn't a good dancer. So, and I blended in. I was a little blonde girl, you know, sitting at a blackjack table, so nobody really suspected too much. I did that for about a year, and when winter came back around, I went back to Florida. I got a room in Kissimmee and started hustling again. It didn't take long before the police found out I was back. A month later, they raided my room. I sold to an undercover. Looking back, I think I was just done. I was tired. When I sold the dope, I had a bad feeling, but I had to make my room money. Hadn't made my room money yet. So I was charged with trafficking, sales and deliver, possession of appraisal lamb, and like 3 other misdemeanors. At the end of that, I would have 6 felonies total that I would be convicted of. This was another turning point where I could have made another decision to go to a program. I had been going to church services while I was incarcerated, and the ladies had said that they could help me get into a program. But more importantly, God had begun to reveal himself to me during this time. I started reading the Bible, and I started in Isaiah chapter 1. As I was reading that, the words started like jumping off the page. And when I was reading about Israel, it was like God was speaking to me. And he said, the verse was, "Hear me, O heaven, and listen, O earth, for the Lord has spoken. I reared children and brought them up, but they have rebelled against me. Ox knows his master, the donkey his manager, but Israel does not know. My people do not understand. Woe to the sinful nation, a people whose guilt is great, a brood of evildoers." children given to corruption. They have forsaken the Lord, and they have spurned the Holy One. And it got my attention, you know. So as I continued reading down in verse 5, it says, "Why should you be beaten anymore? Why do you persist in rebellion? Your whole head is injured and your whole heart is afflicted." And I was like, oh my gosh, like that literally was everything that I had gone through, you know. And this was written 2,000 years ago. And it's like he's writing it just for me, you know. It said, "From the sole of your foot to the top of your head, there is no soundness, only wounds and welts and open sores. I'm covered in abscesses, not cleansed or bandaged or soothed with olive oil." So I just started to cry. I knew I needed to make some changes, and like my life was never the same after that. The real question was how. I was so angry and guarded. I didn't trust anyone. How was I supposed to trust God? As much as I wanted to trust, that was the hardest part. If I trusted, then I could feel at peace, but my brain always went on the worst case scenario. And that's the part that I would overthink, you know, what could go wrong. I started to pray every day, and I would sing worship songs myself that I remembered from when I went to church. And I began reading the Bible. I wanted him to talk to me again, so I decided to start at the beginning. So I started in Genesis, and I couldn't put it down. I started reading in the New Living Translation, and it was like I'd never seen that stuff before, you know. And I read it cover to cover. I read it from Genesis all the way through to Revelation in the time I was incarcerated. After that, I started going through a lot of weird stuff in there, though. I was getting in a lot of fights. I couldn't understand why I was feeling attacked all the time. I ended up going to lock as a housed alone. The problems continued. This one girl I knew from the street started like mocking me and like talking trash and everything. It was almost like the devil was talking to me or something, as weird as that sounds. I couldn't understand how they knew I had changed my life. I may have made a decision, but I had a long way to go. I was far from behaving like a child of God. I was fighting spiritual battles in the natural. I thought my life was going to get better when I decided to follow Jesus, but it seemed like it was getting harder. On my 33rd day, which was October 10th, the state still didn't pick up the charges for my trafficking in sales and delivery. So I was released from lock to the street. I still had no place to go. And in hindsight, if I would have stayed in front of the jail, I know like the ladies that were doing church would have been there that night. I should have stayed put, you know, but like a dog returns to his vomit, I jumped into the car and drove back to the street. I got so sick shortly after that. I think I like had strep throat or something like that. It was hard to hustle, so I got a bag to get me going. The next day, I went to Target and boosted over $700 worth of stuff, like baby stuff, luggage, cosmetics, anything I could sell quickly. I filled up a bag and pushed the cart out of the store. I decided to get a room across the street from Target since I didn't have a car and I could be close to the money. The next day was October 20th, 2014. I broke my own rules. I hit the same store 2 days in a row. I got up, got high, and went shopping. I did the same thing as the day before. I didn't notice anything was off. I had done this 1,000 times before. Why should I worry now? I was getting ready to walk out of the store. I still didn't see anything. Next thing I know, this cop in plain clothes tried to grab me. I pushed the car into him and decided to run. I took off through the double doors and found the store surrounded by sheriff cars. I didn't stop when I saw them. I just kept running, and one of them grabbed my shirt. I don't know how many there was that jumped on top of me, but they broke my collarbone in 3 places. I didn't even feel it because I was so high until I reached up, you know. I was like, I'm broken. You broke me, you know. And there were a lot of big boys, you know. They were big cops. But anyway, I had so much adrenaline that I didn't feel it. So I was there. I went to the hospital for 4 days, and I had surgery with an officer by my side the whole time and cuffed to the bed before I went to jail. They put a plate and 6 pins in my collarbone, and I have a really bad scar, probably a lot worse than it needed to be.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like from here to here. It's like, when I got to the jail, what'd you say?
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, yeah, they really broke it. It wasn't
That's bad.
It wasn't a oopsie.
Yeah.
That was a that's a Man, sorry. I had shoulder surgery, so when I hear shoulder injuries, I'm like,
Not fun.
it's to me.
He's got a real bad infection afterwards. Now it looks like he has a gunshot.
It does.
Oh
Looks just like
no.
I have a gunshot wound on my shoulder. But anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
So when I got to the jail, they put me in medical. Hold on. I'm not sure exactly why they did this. All the other cells must have been full or something, but they put me in the cell that was behind like a storage closet, like with supplies and stuff in it. And there was like a cell with a door, and that's where they put me. And it hadn't been cleaned in a long time. It smelled horrible. It had pee and sweat, mildew. You could see like the dried spit just going down the wall. I didn't have a bedroll yet, so I came to jail already dressed out. All that was there was a dry rotted mattress in the middle of the floor. So I
Wow.
cried out to God and asked him to please help me. I don't want to live like this anymore. I didn't want to live, but despite my best efforts, I wouldn't die. So I surrendered. I got down on my knees, as filthy as that floor was, and began to pray. I knew I needed help and that I wasn't going to be able to do this on my own. I didn't know how to do anything clean. Plus, I had anger issues and I was a rude, nasty little girl. They moved me in out of the closet cell, and then I went to Max. I requested some faith-based programs from the chaplain. I didn't know how I was going, I didn't know how I was going to change, but I knew that I needed Jesus to do it. My kids were my motivation. I had been trying to get back with them since we lost the second house in 2011. My daughter's birthday was on the 22nd, and I was pretty sure I was going to miss it, but at least I would be alive. I wrote 7 different programs, and only one of them responded to me. The program manager told me after my graduation that they didn't typically accept people in the program until after they were released from custody. They were working with my caseworker, and I was doing interviews in the office and everything like that, and they accepted me in the program. They coordinated with the case manager, and for once I had hope. Things were looking up. I don't know why, but it seems like as soon as you're trying to get your life right, people will try your every last nerve. And I never was much of a morning person. So I was still having problems with my temper. And at breakfast, I got into another fight, and off the walk I went. I was housed alone again in a 2-man cell that was really a cage, and the cage was made after like of rebar. You know what rebar is, like that they use to make streets and roads and stuff. That's what the bars were made out of. It was just like a cage, and but I was glad to be alone anyway. I just tried to block everything out around me. I made some earplugs out of a sandwich bag and cotton from the pad, and continued to read my Bible. I stuffed them in my ears so I couldn't hear anything, and just read. I wrote in a journal I got from chapel, and every scripture that resonated with me that would help me to renew my mind, I wrote it down. I still have my Bible to this day from jail. I had written down scriptures and songs and anything that would come into my memory on the blank pages. I would wait 6 months for my trial. My judge changed, and so did my public defender. I believe God was working everything out, because your judge and PD are selected by your last name. And originally, the judge that I had and the PD that I had were the ones that sent me to prison. So they changed to, I had a different public defender. I won't say her name, but she had one of those names that she sounds like a rock star, So I don't know how to
Sounds like a
spell.
rock star.
Yeah, she did. Her last name was Broadway, so I was like, oh my gosh.
Broadway.
Yeah, that's her last name.
Interesting, cool last name.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and her first name was like some stone or a gem or something like that. So I was like, what? So anyway, my new PD had like long dark curly hair. She was a badass. She made me apply to the Phoenix House, as well as the faith-based program, in case the judge didn't like the idea of a faith-based program. She wanted to have a backup. The closer I got to trial, God would encourage me with the word. I knew I was going into the program, even though the deck was stacked against me. And when I say I knew I was going in the program, I knew I was going to the program, but I was terrified to death. And like every thought after I knew I was going to the program was, but what if you don't? But what if this? And like all the things that were, stacked against me, I was a habitual offender, all those things. I just got out of prison. I just, all the circumstances were pointing to me going back to prison. Because I had sales charges, everyone told me I wouldn't get sentenced to a program. They don't send drug dealers to treatment. I said, that's okay. I'm not a drug dealer. I was supporting my habit, Counting the most recent grand theft charge, I would have 6 total felonies, not to mention I had just been released from prison exactly 1 year ago. As Florida has a three strike law. I didn't care deep down. I believed all things were possible. I had survived everything I went through, and I knew that wasn't for nothing. So I just tried to lay it down. I wanted to do everything the word said. If God would give me this last chance to change my life, I vowed I would live for him. I looked at Apostle Paul, and he was persecuted and killed Christians, and God struck him down on the road to Damascus, and that changed his life. This was my road to Damascus. God has struck me down, but I needed to change, and judging by my temper and my attitude problem, I had a long way to go. As I was reading Galatians 2:20, I felt like God was telling me to get baptized. It said, for it's no longer I that live, Christ that lives in me. Maybe if I get baptized, then I can change. These are the thoughts that are going through my head. I'd never been baptized before, not even as a baby. I asked the Lord, but how do I do that in here? I was like trying to figure out how to get baptized in jail. Later, when I was baptized in the program, I would repeat that verse as I was being dunked and speak that word over my life. I didn't automatically change then either. I still struggled. In the meantime, I read the Bible from cover to cover. If I wasn't sleeping, I was reading, writing, worshiping, or praying, which was not hard to do since I was locked down 23 hours a day. One day I was out for my hour and I was cleaning my cell. I couldn't tell you what the issue was, but someone was starting trouble with me while I was out. We were going back and forth, the cage warriors and everything like that. And she spit on me, and I couldn't get to her through the cage, so I threw this bottle of, it was watered down bleach. It wasn't even real bleach. It's probably not even, it's hardly anything. They don't give you real chemicals in there, but I threw that on her. And then I got a DR. And when my hearing came, they raised my classification to high risk. So my uniform changed. I went from orange to red and white striped jumpsuit, locked down 24 hours. Every 3 days I could take a shower, no phone, no canteen. My cell was searched twice per shift, including night shift. And when I came out of my cell, I was a 2-man, shackled at the waist, hands, and feet. I couldn't believe that this was happening over some watered down bleach. I had a minimum of 30 days before I could be reclassified, and that overlapped with my court date. I was so upset. There is no way a judge is going to sentence anyone to a program that was high risk. All I could do was pray, because it was going to take a literal miracle at that point. I fasted and prayed and broke classification and requested to be reclassified sooner. I was reading the Bible one day, and Matthew 10:19-20 said, but when they arrest you, do not worry about what you will say. At the time, you will be given what to say, for it will not be you speaking, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you. I looked up and smiled, and peace came over me. I just felt like everything was going to be okay. I didn't know how, but I knew it was going to be okay. So 3 days before my court date, the CO came in and handed me a uniform. I had never been so happy to see that orange jumpsuit in my life. So I went to court on April 1st, 2015. My heart was beating out of my chest and my hands were sweaty. I was terrified. But at the same time, I knew that I would be sentenced to the program. Why else would I get reclassified early if God wasn't going to show up in that moment in the midst of the trial? I go into the courtroom, and there's my public defender walking around like she owned the place. She was wearing like a suit, this black suit, with like a skirt, probably a little too short actually, black stilettos, and like she was freaking tall anyway. I was like, wow, I didn't have to say anything. She starts going back and forth with the DA. DA was arguing over one point. He said she's a career criminal, habitual offender, had just been released from prison a year before, but he wouldn't budge off the 3-year offer. My fate hung in the balance of me scoring out and going back to prison over one point. So I pled to the bench and asked the judge to send me to treatment in lieu of prison, and that I sincerely wanted to learn a different way of life. The scripture became alive, and the Lord was giving me the words to say as I stood before the judge. The judge gave me a chance. He sentenced me to a 3-year suspended sentence in DOC. The program was 18 months long, and I would need to complete the program and put into practice the things I had learned other than, and then the 18 months after the program, I would have to like walk it out.
Mm-hmm.
If I was kicked out, left early, relapsed, anything like that, I would have to go to prison and start from the beginning, day for day. So I was sentenced to 6 months time served for grand theft charge, and a friend of the family was in the courtroom that was able to take me to the program. When I was released that evening and had 72 hours to report to probation in Fort Lauderdale. I was returning to the place I was born. I thought that was cool. It was my rebirth,
Yeah.
Yeah. And then on April 5th, which was Easter Sunday, I made an official commitment to the Lord during a church service in Key Largo. And that was the program did like rallies. Every Sunday they would go to different churches, and like we would give our testimonies and do like human videos and sing songs and stuff like that. And, the churches support the ministry. I thought that after that I would be easier to control my emotions, but I was wrong. It took a lot of work, and it was like I would take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, and I was always in trouble. Every day was so hard. I cooked breakfast, so before I got out of bed, I would mentally list 5 things I was grateful for in hopes that would change my attitude. It didn't. I would gain some ground in not responding to something that rubbed me the wrong way, and then I would get in trouble for my facial expressions. I felt doomed, and change seemed impossible. The only thing that sustained me is knowing that God had sent me there. So with that in mind, I refused to quit. Just knowing that it was a miracle getting sent there, I knew he was going to be in control of the whole thing. By my 6-month mark, the program manager and the directors pulled me into the office, and we had a come to Jesus moment. I received a discipline and was placed on a 30-day probation. If I didn't start to show improvement, they were going to kick me out. If I got kicked out, like I said, I would have to start all over in prison. Part of this discipline was only being allowed to speak to Jesus, and I wasn't allowed to talk to nobody else. And since I ran through every counselor in the place, they told me Jesus was my counselor for the next 30 days, and they sent me off to the chapel. I was heated. I was livid. I was so frustrated.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Honestly, I look back and I know that it was for a reason. It looks extreme. A lot of people didn't deal with it. I didn't have a choice. It was that or prison,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was trying so hard to respond to adversity, like with love, but I was filled with so much fear, and my fear presented as anger and rage. Every negative emotion that I had came out that angry hole, and I couldn't control it. I threw my Bible on the floor in the chapel, and I let my rage go with both barrels. I was yelling at God at the top of my lungs with my whole chest. I said, I give up, God. Why won't you answer me? This was all very dramatic, but I picked up my Bible off the ground and started to read Daniel chapter 10. And as I read about Daniel's vision and how much fear he had in that situation, I was able to relate to that a lot. In verse 10, it said, a hand touched me and sent me trembling on my hands and knees. He said, Daniel, you who are highly esteemed, consider yourself the words I am about to speak to you, and stand up, for I have now been sent to you. And when he said this to me, I stood up trembling. Then he continued, "Do not be afraid, Daniel. Since the first day you set your mind to gain understanding and humble yourself before God, your words were heard, and I have come to respond to them." And I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, he's speaking to me again, I when he started talking to me when I was in jail, he never talked to me before, and I used to hear Christians say, "The Lord, thus saith the Lord," and all this stuff. And I'm like, y'all are so full of crap. God don't say nothing, and then now he's talking to me, not audibly. That only happened a couple of times, but and it never happened again after that. But
But you're like, oh, he does speak.
yeah, he did have a voice. I'll tell you about that in a minute. I stood up and I composed myself and I gave up. Not in the sense I was quitting, but I stopped fighting for a change. I realized that I didn't need to fight anymore, that Jesus was there fighting for me. I just knew that he loved me. I realized I never knew the love of Jesus before, and perfect love does cast out all fear. I was able to not be aware of every single thought and emotion that was going on around me. For the first time, I didn't care. I had surrendered. I made it through the 30 days and did not get kicked out of the program. I advanced to second phase of the program. The director would call on me to give my testimony every Sunday. So I was getting good at speaking to crowds of people. We did storefronts and car washes to raise money for the program. And I was even a leader from time to time. I enjoyed the storefront because there was always like a divine appointment. We'd run into people that, it was like a God thing. One day when we were in Miami Gardens and Winn-Dixie storefront, there was this guy that came up and he was all like scarred and he looked like he'd been burned in his face and all over his body. He was just full of scars. And in my mind, I thought that he resembled what my guardian angel looks like. It's kept me alive, So I just kind of like had an inside chuckle about that,
He's a little battle worn.
Yeah, I'm like, there's my guardian, but he asked for some literature about the program, and I didn't know this until later, but he had booked a rally with the program director, and we went to his church. So when I pulled up to the church, I seen my guardian angel standing out there like welcoming us. I was like, oh my gosh, it was the coolest thing,
Funny
but
how God works.
I know, it's crazy, and that's exactly what I would have imagined, somebody that's been protecting me has got to be some pretty banged up, So I would end up receiving my high school diploma while I was in the program at 37 years old. I attempted numerous times to get my GED. Every time I would score high on the essay and language portion. And when it came to the test in math, I would like not even show up. And when you don't show up, failure is certain. So nothing was different about this time. I was still scared to death of failure, but I had accomplished so much already by just not giving up. I studied so hard, the math was different than before. There's slopes and Pythagorean theorem, and I never calculus. I was like, what happened to math? I had a tutor, but nothing helped, So I started working the problem backwards from the answer, because there was like a multiple choice questions. There's like 4 choices, and whichever one of those would get me back to the question, then that was the right answer. So that was what I used when I took the test. I was like, as long as
That's
I can,
smart.
yeah, but it took a lot of time. So I asked God to meet me halfway. I would do absolutely everything in my strength that was possible if he would do what I cannot. And I studied so hard, I was dreaming about completing problems in my sleep. And then one morning I heard it audibly, but like in a whisper. He said, it was Zechariah 4:6. It's not by might nor by power, but by the Spirit. But it was like in a whisper. It was like a woman's voice almost, So they said that the Holy Spirit has a still small voice. So it made sense. I was like, I wasn't expecting a woman, So I opened my eyes, I looked around. What was I dreaming that? I had never heard anything like that aside from, my name I heard a couple of times, coming out of sleep. Again, it was a whisper, the Holy Spirit was still a small voice. So, anyway, I knew it was going to be okay after that. They threw me for a loop when I learned I would be tested in math and science the same day. Science was different type of math. It just different. The morning of the test,
It really is.
the morning of the test, I was almost as nervous as I was the day of court. I hate tests. I have a test anxiety in the worst way, but I prayed the entire time. They got ready to start the test, which was timed. I had 52 minutes to complete the first test, which was math. I stuck to my plan to work the problems backwards, but like I said, it had taken a lot of time. And the instructor gave me a 10-minute warning, and I had more than half the test left to go. I said, okay, God, I need you. I didn't want to leave the answers blank, so I started just reading the question and put the whatever was the first one that came to mind. So in a sense, I Christmas treated it, but I was actually reading the question. But I didn't want to leave any of them blank, because then, that was definite wrong answer.
Yeah.
So I ended up completing the test early, and I was going back over the questions, and I just decided not to change any of them. And I just left it in his hand. When that part was done, I went to the bathroom, and I started crying. It was like almost relief, but just, it was just the hardest thing. I still had to take the science test though. So I prayed until that test started and asked God to please let me pass. I didn't want to fail. Someone else was paying for the test, and I didn't want to waste anybody's money. I did the same thing as I did with the math. I finished the test and went back to the center. And a couple hours later, they called me into the office so we could check my score. I looked at the screen, and I only needed a 45 to pass. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I'm like, is this right? In the math, I scored a 56, and in science, I scored a 52.
Wow.
I passed, and I did better in math than I did in the science.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I dropped down to my knees, and I thank God, and I Christmas treed the test. I knew he had done that. It was just a miracle. Yeah. I guess more than half the questions on the test did better than I did in science. A few months later, I completed the program, but I still didn't know what I was supposed to do. Other girls were staying in the program. They were, called to the ministry. They were working with the students and stuff like that. I had no idea what I was doing. And I definitely didn't want to miss God on this, because I was still on probation. So I fasted and I prayed. I was still not the best when it came to people, so I didn't think God wanted me to stay in the ministry. I knew if he didn't anoint me to do something, I didn't want to do it, because there wouldn't be any grace there, and I would fall on my face. I couldn't afford to fail because I was still on probation, and now is the part where I had to apply what I had learned. So I waited on God. I fasted and I prayed and didn't hear a thing, not one word. I met with the program manager and the directors and told them I still didn't know what God wanted me to do. So they offered me an internship to give me more time to seek God. I wouldn't be working directly with the students, but I would lead chapels from time to time and a couple of first phase classes. The two classes they let me teach were growing through failure and anger management. My best two subjects. I was a pretty good cook, so they let me cook for 3 meals. I tried tending the grounds, but learned that was not my gift, because all the plant life began to slowly die around the property. The director learned that he learned that I was a good finisher, good at finishing furniture and stuff like that. So everything made from wood got a new surface. The 6-month internship turned into a 10-month internship, and still crickets, nothing from God. I was writing a lot and seeking God's face. I was getting Habakkuk 2:2, and it was speaking to my heart, and I knew I would write my story one day, so I journaled a lot during that time. Habakkuk 2:2 was write it down and make it plain, is a scripture. And I was writing my story. I had been writing it from the whole time I was locked up. My daughter came to visit me, and then I went to North Carolina to visit my son and my family, my parents. I knew I wasn't going to go back there and live, because nothing had changed with my mom, and I didn't feel strong enough to be around her pills. They had a lot more faith in me than I had in myself, because they did not even try to keep them out of my sight when I was there. When I returned to the program, I stayed clean though. And when I returned
Good
to the
job.
program, yeah, we had another meeting and they presented me with this faith-based halfway house in Fort Lauderdale, Calvary Chapel. I would be living there with like 8 other women. And I could get a job, start rebuilding my life while applying what I had learned. At this point, I had been in the program for a total of 2 years and didn't really have any direction. It took me and this other girl that was a felon. It took us 3 months to find a job that would hire us. We started working at this resort in Pompano in housekeeping, making $9 an hour. On October 2017, that's when we got hired. I didn't care though. It was so hard to find work. I was grateful for the job. I wanted to be faithful with the little and try to be the hands and feet of Jesus. I had to take 3 buses to get to work every day, and we would meet a lot of homeless people and drug addicts on the way. This is where I realized my heart for the street. The Lord had brought me full circle. I was grateful that life was beginning to make sense. I was learning that if I just put one foot in front of the other and lived in the moment, God would take me the rest of the way. If God wanted me to scrub toilets, then that's what I was going to do. I was going to be the best toiletable scrubber there was. Before long, I was promoted to a housekeeping supervisor. This was my first time in a management position, and I realized how much it did matter to me what people thought about me. This is where I would learn how my attitude affected others in the past, and because I was getting that back, what I gave out, I was getting everything back what I had done to people, going off on them. People were doing that to me. So I was getting some karma from after I got in the management position. At this point, I only had a few months left of probation, so I wrote the judge, and he granted me early termination of probation. My license was suspended in 3 different states. So one by one, I paid off each state, and all that was left was North Carolina. But my license was suspended there indefinitely. I had not had a license in more than 10 years. I paid all the money back, and I was approved for the hearing to get my license back, but I needed 2 references. So the GM of the hotel and my supervisor were speaking for me. It was video court, so I did North Carolina from Florida court. It was pretty cool. If I could manage not to get a ticket for 3 years, then it would be completely reinstated. After living in the halfway house for a year, I moved out and rented a room from a nice lady. One day I got a call from my daughter who told me I need to come to North Carolina and say goodbye to my dad. He had congestive heart failure and renal failure. The treatment for one of those illnesses made the other one worse, and they were both fatal. So I jumped on a train, and when I got to the hospital, they had him on comfort measures, which was like 4 milligrams of morphine every hour, and they didn't expect him to make it through the night. Imagine my surprise when I get there and my dad is all happy to see me. He was very medicated. He was noticeably high. So my daughter and I stayed with him around the clock. The hospital sent in grief counselors to help us through the loss of a loved one. I'm glad I didn't start digging his grave though, because 3 days, 4 days, a week went by. He was the same, no better, no worse. They moved him to oncology wing and waited for him to die. After 2 weeks, we were talking to my mom, and she told me and my daughter to ask the doctor to run his labs again. After much convincing, the doctor was going to die on that hill. He agreed to run the labs after informing me that my dad would never leave the hospital alive. They ran the test in his blood work and came back. He still had CHF, but he was not in renal failure. His hemoglobin had improved like a lot.
Wow.
But we
Awesome.
couldn't figure. Yeah, it was a miracle, but we couldn't figure out why he was so confused. He doesn't normally act the way that he was. So they started lowering his morphine dose, and he didn't know who me and my daughter were. He thought I was one of his sisters, and he thought my daughter was his other sister. So, but he was just, when they tapered him off, they just realized how blasted he was. After a couple of days, we brought him home. Once the morphine, wore off, of course, he was himself. So I left and went back to work, went back to Florida. I started drinking during this time so that I could unwind at night. the stress of being a manager and all that stuff. So I never considered myself an alcoholic. So I thought it was fine, just to have a few drinks before I went to bed. But it was slowly increasing. I would be promoted to an executive housekeeper, which I was department head housekeeping right before COVID hit at the end of 2019. Little by little, we were having to lay people off. There were 4 different layoff periods. And I had to clean rooms with the skeleton crew. So I cleaned with everybody else. We were able to keep the doors open until March 31st, 2020. And I was laid off and the doors were closed indefinitely. So I couldn't work. I decided to go back to Jacksonville and spend some time with my family. My dad was still having trouble with his health. And since he had all those mini strokes, it was getting harder for him to keep up with the bills. My mom in the house. My dad was having chemo for bladder cancer, and my mom got this urge to leave Jacksonville and North Carolina, and she didn't care where we went. A few months later, I was getting ready to go back to Florida and check on things. And when I was saying goodbye to my dad, he asked me when I was coming back. I asked him, when do you want me to come back? And he just looked at me and he didn't say a word. I said, okay, I'm going to go get my stuff and I'll be right back. So I packed up and I moved to Jacksonville. Things were not really good at that time. My mom was really trying to move and I was really fighting her on it. When my dad finished his chemo, she found a place in Fayetteville. No matter how hard I tried to convince her to stay, so I'm sorry, to stay so dad could be close to his doctors, the harder we fought. It got to the point that my dad asked me to try to get along with my mom. He couldn't stand the fighting, and I said, Dad, do you realize that for me to do that, I got to let you die? But that's what I did. I stopped fighting with her. When we got to Fayetteville, I bought an old 70 model trailer, $10,000 rent to own, and me and my daughter lived there. I couldn't find anybody to rent to me because of my convictions and everything. You find out how strong your faith is when you're going through a storm. I would tell God I trust him, but the fear was really bad. And all I could think of how easy it would be to end up back in a situation I was in before. I started cleaning houses and was working part-time, cleaning a detox center. I would basically started over when I moved there. I was barely making ends meet between me and my daughter. And I started to see God show up. And when the math wasn't mathing and my calculations weren't adding up, the bills weren't adding up, I always had enough money for the bills. We never came up short. The trailer needed a lot of work. Then the man let on, and me and my daughter fixed the plumbing in the house ourselves. My dad would walk me through the things that needed fixed, and he'd tell us how to do it. And he, describing the plumbing like one of those things that etch a sketches or something like that, that you put the Lincoln Log. Yeah, and he's just like, you got to make it fit in there. So me and my daughter hooked the plumbing up in the house, and everything in that place leaked. The roof leaked, everything.
Wow.
When we got in the bathtub, the whole thing rocked, and it was
Ooh,
yeah, it was you felt like you were going to fall through the floor and end up in the front yard.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, but I was grateful. I had a roof over my head. It's it was my place for the first time. I had my own place. In sobriety. I was finally getting somewhere. I was looking back too, and I realized why God put me through those situations, because I am a hard-headed person. And if I didn't go through these things and learn how to behave this way, I never would have changed. If he would have just handed it to me, I would never have appreciated what I had.
Yeah.
So I know now why he did that. I was still drinking though, but I was managing it. And then one night, but I was drinking every night. It was starting to get every night. I was drinking White Claw, which I justified as barely alcohol, but I was up to 12 of those a day. I started to recognize addictive behavior, and I knew that alcohol was so much worse to kick. I knew that you could die from it. So And it was so hard for me to get clean the first time. I didn't want to destroy my life again, so I stopped drinking. I learned to be grateful with what I had, and I appreciated having the roof over my head, even if the roof leaked. It was mine. Instead of being afraid every time I stepped in the tub, I thank God for running hot water. My daughter moved out, and my son moved in with me, and it was hard for me to find housing. So we had to stay there. Like, I kept trying to find another apartment, but we just had to stay there. Every place I applied ran a background check, and they didn't see that I had been sober for 7 years. They just saw the charges that basically looked like a blonde gangster on paper.
Yeah.
No one ever asked me about my recovery program or how I'm doing now. They didn't care. They just said no, took my $50, and so I just stopped wasting my money, and I just stayed there until the doors opened up for another place.
Mm-hmm.
My dad, he started having 9 out of 10 level pain in his lower stomach. He was still having chest pains. So I called my brother. I told him that he needed to take dad back to Jacksonville so his doctors could look at him. We convinced my dad to move in with my brother. And when he went to his doctors, our worst fears had come into reality. The cancer had metastasized his pancreas and completely consumed his liver. It's completely. He was only given a couple of months at the most. I had a lot of anger to work through with this. I knew we shouldn't have moved, but when God closes one door, he opens another, and us moving to Fayetteville began to make sense. I realized it's my dad's time to go. He was dying either way. All the doors started opening for me in Fayetteville. Around the same time, I was cleaning the detox center. And one day I was cleaning the room named Serenity. As I was mopping the floor, I could hear a group going on out in the day room. Somebody was telling their story, and then all of a sudden it hit me. Well, I knew what I was supposed to be doing. It was like a big light went off, and like I could relate to everything that was being said. Later, I asked the guy, that was speaking, what was his job? I'd never heard of a peer support before. And then he told me how he got certified and everything like that. So I started saving up my money for the class and the certification. As I was completing the class and getting certified as a peer support, my dad, and I was going back and forth seeing my dad, but I was able to spend some time before he passed, and I knew that Saturday was the last time I was going to see him. I don't know how, but I just knew that was the last time when we said goodbye. It took me 3 different times to leave that day. I kept looking for reasons to go back in and give him another hug. I said, okay, Dad, I'll see you next week. He usually always said, you will, like very definitively. But this time he said, I hope. And I went back in for another hug. Somehow I knew I would be the last time I saw him, though. And when my daughter and I arrived back at my mom's apartment to give the cat insulin when we got back, I grieved and cried so hard like I had never cried before in my life. It felt like my whole heart was being ripped out of my chest. I couldn't understand why I was grieving. He was still alive, The next Sunday, the day room, when I was in the day room cleaning when my brother called. It was about 11 in the morning, and my brother always has a way with words. He said, well, Dad's dead. And I dropped the mop and left everything there. I didn't put anything away. I asked someone to do it for me. I called the boss. I went to Jacksonville. They say when, God closes one door, he opens another. As my dad passed away, I was being certified as a peer support specialist. I believe with all my heart that God knew what he was doing, allowing me to get certified when I was losing my dad. I now know what my purpose was, and I was stepping into it. My brother told me that my dad told him how proud he was of me when he was living with him. He said, your sister really turned it around, didn't she? I think he died because he knew I was going to be okay. When I was going through rehab, crisis unit stays, locked up in jail, my dad and my daughter were the only ones who supported me, came and saw me. My dad was always in my corner, even when he was mad at me. I didn't deserve them, but they were always there. So the story continues. I have been a peer support for 5 years. Recently was certified as a community health worker for a promotion in the company I was in. So I keep putting one foot in front of the other, and I try to be there for my family. I know God is a miracle worker because my son is thriving on his own and his girlfriend and has a girlfriend. My mom is living with me. And if you had told me this 5 years ago, I would have laughed at you. My mom and I are doing better than ever. We still have a long way to go, but I'm stretching and growing every day. Today, I'm living each day and giving back what the Lord has blessed me with. The Bible says, when you do unto the least of these, you do it unto me. And I want to love people like Jesus loves. I would not be who I am today if someone had not reached out and took a chance on me. My road was probably a lot harder than it really needed to be, but I'm grateful for everything I went through and learned along the way. The story continues, and I'm thankful for the Lord, what the Lord is doing in my life. I found a church family that I love, and this church loves people, which is awesome because I hadn't been to church in 8 years before I found this church.
Wow.
I had a relationship with God, which probably explains why I started drinking too. I just didn't have a foundation. So I used to tell people I have no idea what I would do if I was face to face with my drug of choice. I would hope that I would do the right thing, but it was something I was terrified of. My mom recently broke her leg and was prescribed Roxy 5 milligrams, and they break down. And we have an insulin dependent cat, so we have plenty of rigs laying around the house. And it happened. I was changing my mom's bed when it hit me. They were right in front of me. The bottle of pills, the Roxys were sitting there. Picked them up. I poured a bunch in my hand, and I realized I didn't want to use them, but I was having a panic attack. So I called a friend of mine from church and told her what was going on and everything. I put the pills back. I didn't want to use them, but it was like almost like a knee-jerk reaction to pick them up and put them in your hand kind of thing. So I put them back, and now I know what would happen if I was face to face with the devil himself. And I'm not afraid of them anymore. Now I don't worry about relapsing like with them around, because when I saw them in front of me and there was the avenue to do them that I would have wanted to, I didn't do it. And I didn't even want to because how far I had come, I had come too far to go back, so.
That's incredible.
Story.
I don't really know where to you packed a whole bunch of stuff in there, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just I wrote stuff down, but I don't. Some of the things that did stick out to me that I talk about a lot because it's how I am and how I think most people are. And sorry, she keeps yawning. She's exhausted. You're not boring. She's just a yawner.
I do.
I don't know why. I do it literally every time that I think it's these lights. Because every time that we get on here, I just start. Huh?
Do your eyes water when you yawn too?
Yeah.
I do that, and I'm like tears coming down my face. I'm like, I'm just tired.
Yeah, it's just.
Well, we have these like these lights that are glaring in our face. I have a hat on, so it's not as bad, but she's looking right at all of them.
And it's just making me just
yawn.
Every time that we have guests, I'm always just over here. Just like I tried to get out of the frame, and apparently I was still completely in the frame.
Oh, no, you were well within the frame.
I didn't realize it. I was way over there, and he was like,
put my hand over my mouth. I'm like, you're still on the camera. But no, so for me, some of the things I talk about, I can tell you what, some of the things that I talk about a lot is the redemption of a person. The redemption of a person, but also the crap, I can't remember the word right now. when you give your life to Christ and that change happens. I can't remember what that change is called right now.
Either
I hate it when that happens.
transformation.
I know what you're talking about, and I can't think of the name either.
Transformation.
Yeah, kind of, but I'll just explain what I'm saying. It'll come up. The So some people have, when they give their life to Christ, it's like an instant, like the struggles that they had, they don't have anymore. The person they were, they're not that person anymore. And that's not me. And that's not most of the people that I know. But that stuck out to me when, well, what I saw was you, you, you believed and you were trying, but you you weren't fully succeeding yet, but you kept trying, kept believing, and eventually you got there. And that's more of like me, like struggles that I've had. Sometimes for a while in my life I felt bad, down on myself. I was raised in the church and all of that, so I felt down on myself because I was like, how come this person over here, when they gave their life to God, it was like, and they're never struggled again. Here I am, raised in the church, and I'm still dealing with this. Why is that? So it's just encouraging for me when other people don't have that instantaneous change in their life. And I think it's encouraging to a lot of people. Like you're not failing just because you didn't like have this crazy moment where everything was fixed. Like sometimes it takes time, and that's okay. I don't know. I just feel like that's
a lot of
something
times
God.
it's like you ask God for a cake and he'll give you ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He'll give you the eggs,
Yeah.
he'll give you the flour,
Yeah.
everything. And it's up to you to make something out of that.
Yeah, do you know who TD Jakes is? Bishop TD Jakes?
Mhm.
He said one time, I was listening to something he was on, and he said people keep praying, he's like, for example, you have a table, or you need a table, and you keep asking God for a table,
Oh, I
and you
know it.
don't, and you keep not getting the table, and you keep asking God, where's the table? I'm praying for a table. And he said, God's sitting up there going, man, I gave you two hands and trees.
Yes.
You can go make a table. Like
Yes.
that's what it reminds me of. It's like he gives you the tools, he gives you the path. And I don't want to walk down that line of being like, well, God's not gonna let you fall or whatever. I'm basically, the only way you're
Just
going to
free
grow
will.
is by being stretched. The only way you're going to improve is by being stretched. And he has to let you do that. We're humans. We have to learn through failure, and we have to learn through struggles. And I think your story is a great
Mhm.
example of that for me. It's a good example of that. Like you can have it really rough, but you're never so far gone, God can't get you back.
Yeah.
And
You have air in your lungs,
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
until you take your final breath, you have a chance. It doesn't matter where you start. It only matters where you are when you cross the finish line. And you have a great story for that as an example. The other thing,
Oh, your story made me want to cry like a dozen times. I don't usually get like that.
the
I
other
was had a
thing,
couple of moments too.
you another thing you said was just a comment. You said you felt like your life was harder with when you gave your life to Christ.
I say that all the time.
And
Right.
that is something that is getting very lost today, I
Mhm.
think, in the church, in the at least in America, I'd say kind of in the more modern world, the developed world, because it's like this comfort gospel. It's like, no, your life's probably going to suck worse in
That's not
some
the
ways,
Bible.
but in other ways, you're going to be free.
Yeah.
You're going to have a peace that doesn't make any kind of sense. You're going to have this comfort that also doesn't make any kind of sense. And that's not to say you won't have successes. It's just, the ways that you're weakest at, it's going to feel like your life sucks even worse.
Well, that's like when you were saying that about when you were, can't remember which part it was, but it was when you were talking about when you were working. I think it was one of the times when you were, I can't remember if it was when you were already finished with your program or if it was one of the times when you were in addiction, but when you were having that job and the money
Mhm.
kept coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think God was already speaking to you some. And it reminded me of like, me and him, we've had lots and lots of trials since, we've been together and all that. And then there was one time he got laid off. Well, actually, it's happened twice. He got laid off, and then another time when he tried to join basic, when he tried to join the military, and then he had to leave during basic because he got hurt. He didn't have a job during that time, just like when he got laid off. And there was never a time that we went without money. God was always providing. When he was laid off, he had that last bit of money from that check, and then his dad had him doing make readies, and then he had a job that was lined up at his previous place that he had worked at when we first got together, but he wasn't going to get that paycheck for about 2 or 3 more weeks. So there's 2 or 3 weeks in between where there wasn't going to be any money, but because his dad had him doing this, and then we had a friend of mine was having us do dog sitting, so we never went a single time. And if I'm not mistaken, we even had extra money to buy stuff for the gender reveal. That's when I was pregnant with Mira.
Oh, we did all kind of stuff. Yeah, we
Yeah.
were pregnant with our youngest, and
Yeah.
we did we had the ultrasound, the 3D
Yeah.
like ultrasound thing where we found
Yeah.
out our gender and all that we had to pay for. It wasn't part of the
Yeah.
doctor thing. We did all kind of stuff.
Yeah. And like God just,
it was like you said, it was just a cool, like,
and we didn't
money
have,
keeps appearing and I don't know where it's
yeah.
coming from. I'm not sure if it's 100% legal, but I'm not going
Yeah.
to argue right
Well,
now.
and it was getting to where like, that was the first time that I saw what he meant about not stressing, because he was just so, he wasn't stressed, he wasn't thinking about it. And so I did that. I didn't really think about the money much until after it all happened, and then I was like, oh my gosh. Because around that time too, he got a job. He went back to his old job, and then he got a job at Blue Origin, which is where he works at now. And the same thing was happening. He had that easy glide into that job. So there was no gap in between of money, nothing. We didn't have a single time where there wasn't no food on the table. And then when he got out of basic training, we we had an issue when he was gone. He got really hurt, and I had to break our lease. We'd only been moved in there like maybe 2 months. Had to break that lease, pack up everything, moved to Oklahoma where he was at, found a place that did month to month leases, and then we timed it where he didn't even have a for sure date yet, I don't think, about when he was going to be coming home. It was just like, well, they said I might get to go home at this time. So then I let that landlord know, hey, he's going to be getting sent home at this time. We're going to move back to Alabama. And then his dad was back home here in this current house that we're in. He came to this house and checked it out for us, paid for everything for us to get. Well, I think he used our own money. I can't remember how he did it, but he went and took the money to the place, got us all set up in this house, and we moved in here. He had a little bit of money left, from his last check at in the Army. Then he got his job back at Blue, and it was just a seamless transition. We even bought a dog during that,
Wow.
$500 dog, and like still just nothing, able to get utilities cut on, just like everything. God providing it. Didn't think about that one until just now.
Mhm.
That's two instances.
Yeah, but that's your story is just God being like, trust me,
Mm-hmm.
just wait, trust me.
And all those times with those Bible verses you were talking about too, that's what made me want to start crying. Is like every time he gave you a word, it was just like to the letter what you were dealing with.
I know.
Like
and
that,
it was written
what was
2,000
verse
years
20?
ago. Yeah.
Yeah, something
Yeah.
that's written that long ago, and it's how does that apply to me? And
Yeah.
that's something that a pastor told me one time. They said that's why it's called the living word,
Yeah.
because you can read a verse 600 times and it doesn't really mean much, and then
Mhm.
one time you read it and you're like, oh, holy crap, that's what that means.
Well,
And then a different phase of your life, you read it again and it applies
It's
to
another.
that and means
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
crazy.
that one that you were saying, I don't remember if it was the Isaiah one, but it was one of the first times. It was when you were still using the needle and you had all those sores. Was that the
Yeah,
Isaiah one that you read?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one had me almost in tears because I was like, that was just everything you were going through to, oh man, that one got me. That one had me
You
just,
have a very good. What do you do anything? And you may have brought this up. I don't have a great memory, so if I forgot, forgive me. But do you do anything with your story or testimony or anything now, as far as
Well,
speaking
I'm
at
a peer
places or
support.
anything?
Yeah, I don't publicly speak. I
Mhm.
feel, and this is why I decided to do this one too, because I really feel like, God wants me to speak about my story more. And and I haven't been doing that. I do it on a more intimate level with my my clients and stuff like that, So
Mhm.
I share parts of my stories that are relevant to like whatever they're going through. So I use it in my everyday life and everything, but I wanted to share it more publicly because I really feel like there's so many people that have gone through what I'm going through, and they don't have that miraculous thing that happened that just
Mhm.
like a light switch,
Yeah.
and everything was better one day. It's not like that, God, and
Mhm.
that's how God is. And you can see it throughout the Bible. He did that with everybody else, with all the people as they go through the Bible. He put them through stuff, and that's how they grew. Like Peter, that dude
Mhm.
he was a big mouth. He was always
Yep.
saying the wrong thing, But I was relating to Peter. I relate to him so much because I was one of those with a big mouth. You know, and now I'm more like reserved now because I don't want to say the wrong things. I don't want to hurt people's feelings anymore. Like, what happened to you?
Yeah.
Yeah. No. The reason I asked that is because you should.
Yeah.
I mean, speak and not necessarily hurt people's feelings unless it's applicable.
No.
But you should speak because your testimony, first of all, it's biblical, as you know. I mean, but it's biblical to do that. So that's one thing. But then the other is just it. Have you ever heard of a guy named Todd White? I've mentioned him on here a bunch of times. I know I probably
Yes.
sound like
Oh
an
my God,
advocate
I
of
love
his.
him. Yes.
Yeah, like the power of a testimony. Like his ministry was started off of his testimony. And I like his like slogan thing that he has. He's like, no, I'm not a preacher. I like bringing Christians back to Christ. Like,
Yeah.
ooh, that
I
kind
went
of.
and I did the same thing when I left the program.
Dude, take off my
I
shirt.
got to the point where I wasn't saying I'm a Christian. I didn't like that because people are automatically put off by it,
Yeah. Oh, you're
just because of
judgmental. Yeah.
Yeah, so I always, tell them I'm a believer, I'm a child of God and all that stuff. I'll
Hmm.
tell people I'm a Christian now because like I don't care now,
Hmm.
but I don't want people to be like, I'm gonna say I'm gonna talk about Jesus no matter what, you know what I'm saying? I don't care if it hurts your feelings or not. But
Yep.
anyway.
That's how I am. If I'm telling the truth, and I mean I'm not going to try to be a jerk about it, but if I'm telling the truth and it offends you, I'm that's not my fault.
Probably
I'm
saying that what if you're offending somebody, then they're probably hitting on some truth there.
well, yeah, yeah. I mean, offense is usually some sort of defensive. Um, being offended is a defensive response to hearing what you don't want to hear because you know it applies. Usually, usually. At least especially when it comes to faith things, I think, my opinion, that I've seen. But
In the
I don't know
church I
what it what
started going through too, that I noticed that I am convicted. And it's not because of the way that they're putting it off and everything, but everything that they talk about, like it gets me right in the feels, and I'm
yeah.
like convicted, I'm like, it makes me want to do better. It makes me want to be a better Christian.
Yeah.
And because I think before I went to the church, I was pretty lukewarm, but I've made some commitments to God, and you know, I'm getting up there in the age, you know what I'm saying? But like, I'm ready. I'm just going to wait on him for everything, relationships and everything. I'm not, dating or anything like that anymore.
Mhm.
I am, if God sends me somebody, then he sends me somebody. But
That's
yeah,
what I said
I
about
just,
you.
oh,
She did.
That's what I said, and then my mom had to force me to date him.
Or hang
wow.
out.
Well, to hang out with him, but that's
Yeah.
what and I've talked about this a lot of times on here too. But when I was in recovery, I had even while I was I went to a faith based program like you did, and while I was there, I was still trying to date people, go see them on my home passes, and I dated someone that was still in active addiction. I came home and I relapsed once with him, and then for some reason, I thought it was a good idea, like, because I still liked him, like, oh, let's actually date, because he was in jail and he was, trying to be sober and all that. Well, then I'm not going to go into how it all happened, but I tricked my mom, the sinner, into me going and hanging out with him. My mom figured it out. So I ended up getting in trouble. I had to start the program over a second time. And that's one thing that reminded me of myself too when you were saying that, when you couldn't get it right and with your anger and all that kind of stuff and how you were talking, how they disciplined you by, you couldn't talk for 30 days. Well, they put me back in restoration and I was mad, like you said you were. Like I went up in there, tossing my stuff down, just made it known I was not happy. But when I finished the program though, after the second time in restoration, I started realizing that I was focusing on guys too much. And I was hurt because of some stuff that happened with that guy, that just a lot of stuff. And I was just like, I told God, I said, okay, I was like, I'm not going to date anybody until I know that I know that I know that you sent him to me. And then this little guy, well, big guy, I guess, was at church when my mom, because I left the program and all that, which is a whole other story. But my mom was like, if you're going to stay with us, you got to go to church. We're going to church tomorrow. It's Meet the Pastor's Day. We get pizza and all this other stuff. I was like, oh, okay. And I was high as a kite because I relapsed a third time when I got home. With that same exact guy, actually. But I'm sitting there and I get a message from him at the pizza part, and he was asking me if I happened to be at Journey that day. And then I looked further back and he had texted me that morning too. So he texted me twice that day. And I was dumb and not realizing how many people were up there playing drums. So he tells me, or not how many people, how the difference in how they looked. There's two people doing drums, and he said that he was playing, that he was the one up there playing drums. And I said, well, which one? He said, well, I'm not the old guy up there. I was like, oh, I didn't realize he was old. But, you know, I hung out with him, and then I think like 2 months into us dating, I took him to the Love Lady
Just
Center.
hanging out.
Yeah, I was hanging out. And the pastor there, he's the one that was always telling me, do not date people, you know, stay away. You need to focus on yourself. And we went up there and I introduced Dylan, and we weren't even dating yet. And he just assumed we were dating, and he prayed over us, asking God to bless our relationship and all this. And I was like, oh, well, maybe that's my sign. So then me and him had a talk, and we officially started dating. We got married. We got engaged 6 months into dating, and then about a year into dating, we got married. We've been married almost 6 years. No, almost 5 years. Be 5 years in January. So I say all that to say that God will, when God's ready, He'll definitely place somebody. I think
I
it's
just
good.
got tired of the counterfeit, you know.
Yeah.
And it would always leave me, you know, having, you know, you get codependent, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like if you are in relationships, you get used to having somebody there. And then
Yeah.
whenever it doesn't work out, you got to go through the whole process and, you know,
Yeah.
breakups and all that stuff. I got tired of that. I got
Yeah.
tired
Mhm.
of, you know, having to heal myself, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, I told God I was tired of hanging out with the counterfeit, and that,
Mhm.
you know, I'm letting him guide my footsteps. I'm letting him
Yeah.
bring a person into my life. He may say, Cara, I want you to be like the Apostle Paul and call me to singleton. And I'll be okay with
Mhm.
that, you know,
Yeah.
because I don't want something that's not of God. You
Yeah.
Yeah,
know,
I mean
it's
that
just, it never works.
Yeah.
staying single is also you know, biblical as well. You know, it actually
Priests do it.
yeah, I think so. It actually does say, like, you know, though if you can stay single, do it, because you're twice blessed.
Yeah.
But if you can't, get married, because then it's ordained.
Yeah. Well,
Nuns
if
do
you,
that
and
too,
then
don't they?
they
Yeah.
want you to get married in case like you're burning, you know, like you'll sin, you know, or that kind
Yeah.
of thing, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so, I don't know.
But you have a really good story, and it was well laid out too. Like, I appreciated that.
Did you type it all down?
Yeah, I mean, I was like, I didn't even know how I was gonna do it, if I was just gonna like, I did a little bit of freestyle. I read some, you know, so
Yeah.
but I just didn't want to forget things and have to go
Yeah.
backwards and
Hmm.
do all that stuff. So I just kind of put it in chronological order.
Yeah. I liked that.
Yeah, that was good. I like that. I appreciate that.
That's how I need to do mine when I tell my stuff, so I don't squirrel off.
Yeah.
I'm horrible at squirreling.
Me too.
What is your tattoo there?
Which one? That?
Yeah.
It's a dove. Remember when I said it was rebar? The cages were rebar. That's what this is supposed to be.
Oh, wow.
It's not done yet. And
And
then
then
the
a
dove is,
dove.
yeah, coming out of the flames. And then this is my dad's motorcycle. If you can see it. It's hard to see.
Yeah, I can't really
Yeah.
see. It's okay.
Yeah, it's hard to see.
I kind of saw
But
part
yeah,
of the handlebar.
Yeah.
yeah, but that was
That look.
actually his bike. It was a picture of his bike. They did the tattoo of it,
Oh,
so
wow.
the memorial.
That looks really good. It's a good. Whoever did that did a really good job.
Yeah.
She can't hear you without a microphone. I don't know. Your hand's in the way. Can you see it? Okay.
Yeah. What is that?
That's a cartoon version picture of me and my brother that just passed away about a year ago. Yeah. I got it on his 1 year anniversary of him passing away.
Wow.
So it's me and him standing next to each other when we were little kids, and I'm holding my toy Dalmatian.
Aw.
But no, whoever did that did a good job.
It looks really nice.
I'm
I have a
only
lot of
going with female artists from now on. To be honest, he did a good job. I'm glad he did two of my tattoos, but I won't go back to that guy. And then the guy that did this one, I won't go back to a guy. I'm gonna stick with female artists from now on.
most of my tattoo. I'm wearing long sleeves, but I have both of my arms are covered, and most of my tattoos were done by a girl. Her name's Kim, and
Wow.
she does a really good job. And everything she's done for me is it's like exactly what I wanted,
Mm-hmm.
and good line work. Didn't blow them out.
And see the
Didn't
guy
feel
that
like
did
I
the
was gonna
dove,
die.
he
Do what?
really overworked the needle on this. And it took a
Mm,
long time for it to heal. Like I think he was purposely trying to hurt me, to be honest with you. And he wasn't very honest either. So it's
mm.
okay. I'm a child of God. You can mess with me. God will get you. I don't have to do nothing.
Then we'll
You know,
find somebody else. Um,
exactly.
but thank you very much for telling your story, and you need to tell it more and to more people
Yeah.
because you,
Man, I
it's
wish JJ was here for it.
oh yeah,
JJ would have. We probably wouldn't be ending
you'd have
within an hour
no,
with JJ.
he'd have a field day.
Yeah,
Y'all would
JJ would have
love it.
unpacked. Yeah, he would have had a ball.
And if you
But
ever want me to be back on the show too, I'd be grateful.
Yeah, I think
yeah,
we may need to do one with JJ.
I'd like to do one with you and JJ.
Yeah,
They kind of rotate out when it
yeah,
comes to interviews.
Okay.
Um, but he went to Bible college
yeah.
and he has a degree in something to do with the
He's
Bible.
technically a minister, I think's what me and him were saying, but he's not ordained through a specific church.
He's not ordained anymore. He wasn't one.
Yeah.
But he was his stories on our we did a story on him before he joined us. So if you go to the YouTube channel and look for the thumbnail that says I prayed to Satan, that's him. That's
Mhm.
his story.
Oh,
I did,
I did that too. I didn't put that in my story, but that is part of my story
yeah, he did.
for drugs.
He
Yeah.
prayed to Satan to get information on people so that he could know their weaknesses and so he could know how to get at them and get what he needed out of them. But yeah, he had a alcoholic, drug addictions, praying to Satan for a long time
Yeah.
until his parents were like, "You're going to Kentucky Mountain Bible College in the hills of Kentucky where you can't be around anybody."
Well, didn't his mom say
And
something to him too, like that he was gonna go to hell, and he
she
just
said,
she just kind of looked at him, or he looked at her.
she said in the middle of the church one time, she said, "JJ, you have a dark heart, and if you die, you're going to go to hell unless you get this figured out."
Didn't he like look
It's
at?
funny now. It
Yeah.
wasn't funny
But
then.
didn't he like look at her and say, "I know," or
Yeah,
like,
he looked at her and said, "That doesn't bother me."
yeah.
Um,
He said
Uh,
that like you could tell that
yeah,
crushed
can't
her.
tell
and
me God
he,
isn't a miracle worker.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, yeah, exactly, and that's why I'd like to do another one with you and him because
He would have such
he's
a
extremely
story.
knowledgeable in the Bible for one, but two, y'all have really similar stories
Mhm.
in a lot of ways,
I
and
was thinking about him the entire time she was talking.
yeah, I think that'd be so we can work that out, figure that out, and
Yeah.
Yeah,
we'll
anytime.
Yeah.
orchestrate it. But again, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your story, and please do. I mean, I don't know what it looks like, but pray about it. See what God
Yeah.
wants you to do, because more people need to hear your story. Because you're going to encourage a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
To get clean and realize that it's not necessarily a easy linear path. It takes work, but you have to keep working.
I think she's our first one we've had that went to a faith-based one and didn't do AA too. All of our others that we've been doing, I think.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
you're our first one
Yeah.
to actually come on here. That now some of them they had, God was like in their story and they talked about God and what God did for them, but they all did the 12 steps and the NA and stuff.
Yeah.
So
And
I
I
thought
go
it
to
was
all
pretty
parts
cool.
of recovery too. I like the camaraderie in meetings. So I started going to a Celebrate Recovery one recently.
Mhm.
And then I've gone to NA meetings. You just got to be careful with those because there's a lot of like predatory type people that go there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and not that I'm
I just
worried about it or anything, but
I don't really like meetings in general. Like even when I was at Love Lady, we had to do Celebrate Recovery, and the people that were there with us were fine,
Oops.
but it was the people that were coming off the streets. It was a trigger sometimes because sometimes the people and it's not a bad thing. You know, everybody needs to be able to go into meetings, but if you're in recovery freshly in it and stuff, and there's people that are still coming to their meetings while they're still actively using, that was triggering for me, seeing them sitting across from me and they're still just high as a kite. You know, we had one girl that actually had left the program, and we went to a meeting, a Celebrate Recovery meeting, and she came in just, I mean, off a bender, smelled really bad because she hadn't bathed in a while. And
yeah,
thankfully, we were able to get her back at the center that night. But, you know, it's very triggering
yeah,
sometimes. And that's why since I've been home, I haven't gone to a single meeting because I'm like, I don't know how I would do living back out in my hometown. Kind of like what you were saying about if it's in front of you. I don't know what I would do if I went to a meeting and there was someone from my hometown actively using in the bathroom. It's like, how am
yeah.
I gonna, respond
Kind
to
of like
that?
one of those things where you don't want to find out what would happen,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know?
So this
Like,
helps though.
Yeah. This
Doing
yeah.
the,
show kind of helps.
yeah.
And you just with doing all this too, I I know my purpose is in recovery. You know,
Hmm.
I'm writing my book, doing the things, there's a lot that I didn't talk about, that's in my story. Yeah, just there's a lot, but I didn't put it all in here. Actually,
Yeah.
it's I didn't know what I was gonna speak about until just today, to be honest with
Hmm.
you. I am recovering from a medical procedure that went wrong. Um,
Mm.
I think the devil did not want me to tell my story. So yeah, so that's what I'm struggling with my voice or whatever. But they put me under, and when I came back, I aspirated, and so this is
Mm.
all fluid that I
Mm.
aspirated. I sound like this, so.
Oh,
But I was like, not gonna. I'm doing it,
Well,
and I'll
we're
do it
glad
for
you did.
anybody else that'll let me, get up and tell my story. I'll do it because, I don't want to waste what God's done for me.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, we're gonna be seeing JJ tomorrow, so I can we can talk to him and I can message you and see like
And
we can
there's,
work something out.
sorry, I
You're fine. But we can try to
right over you there.
between like when I see him tomorrow, I can message you and we can try to work something out between y'all's two schedules and see.
Cool. Yeah.
There's also Leslie.
Leslie,
Leslie.
what for her?
Yeah.
I don't know how that would work. A three-way.
Hmm?
What are you talking about?
Okay. So Pastor Leslie has his own podcast.
What?
The pastor that she was talking about that prayed over us that time when we
Oh
went to
yeah.
her, his name is Pastor Leslie. Well, his name is Leslie, Pastor Leslie, and he's the senior like staff pastor for the Love Lady Center in Birmingham. She went, and he has his own podcast, and his own, they have like a podcast network.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
we didn't know that.
yeah, we didn't know that till we interviewed him.
Wow.
And I'm going to be getting with him tomorrow about some things, and if you want to, I can bring you up and see if you could go on his show. I think his is bigger than ours.
Yeah.
He's had his a lot longer than we have, so he has a bigger audience
Sure.
than we do.
Yeah,
But
I would be honored.
okay.
Any,
I
yeah,
got confused. I thought you meant like a three-way Zoom
Oh,
Zoom
no.
call. That's why I was like, what?
Well, you can technically. I can have like 15 people on here,
No, but I was just I got lost. Never
yeah,
mind.
no, but yeah, I'll ask him about that and see what can be worked out with that. But thank you for taking the time. Thank you for sharing and having the courage to do so.
Mhm.
But we'll be praying for you, and pray that this episode and touches even one person that needs to hear it. And that's the whole point of this. And
Mhm.
I think that your story will do that. And God honors it when we try to do things for His people and for His kingdom. And He's definitely honoring you. And your best is still coming. So
Mhm.
cool to see.
He's still got a lot of work left to do in me, but I know it's coming because I'm never gonna quit.
We all do. He's still working in me about a lot of things too.
Me
And
too.
I've been in church my entire life, and hoo-yah Christian stuff, and I still,
I was a
is-
step
is-
down from a PK. My best friend was a PK, and I was always at her house. And her dad started a church when we were little, and so we were always in church to the point that I
Mhm.
got so jaded because I didn't have a real experience with God myself until way later.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. I've come across a lot of people that have that similar experience, and but man, when they do, it's like, oh, like yourself, it's like, oh, that was what it's supposed to be like. Okay.
Oh, I thought people were blowing smoke, when they were
Yeah.
said, they'll say it the Lord. Like, he didn't say nothing to you. And if he did, I don't want to hear it. If he wanted me to
Yeah.
know, he'd tell me.
Yeah, no, she said the same things to me before. Be like, I heard God say this, and she's like, what is that like? Is it a conversation, or is it? I'm like, well, no, not really. We just kind of say it that way to make it make sense to the conversation that we're having
Right.
with you. But really, it's more for me. It's like an instant download of information, fully
Right.
formed thoughts just appear, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, because preachers or do the things like, and God said this, and then I said that, and then God said this, and I'm like,
Like, how could be doing that?
Yeah. And it's really what it is you have this instant download of information. For me, you have this instant download of information, and you're like, oh, there it is. And then you start dissecting that. And that's where the conversation comes in. Well, what do you mean about this? And then you're just dissecting that information that you got, and you're like, oh, there's
Gives
that
you that
answer. Well, what
answer.
about this?
Yeah.
There's that answer.
Yeah.
Those are there. But yeah, we need to wrap it up. Otherwise, I'm going to keep yabbering. But we really appreciate it. Thank you. And let's see, this will be 7th. No, when?
I don't know anymore. It's going to be towards the middle to the end of October.
Okay.
When this comes out.
When this comes out. Because we have one that's coming out tomorrow, and then another one the week after that, and another one the week after that, and another one the week after that, and then yours is the 5th one.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
so that'll be around my sober date. 10/20.
Really? You're the second one to say that.
When by chance would that be?
2014. October 20th.
October 20th.
It'll be around that time, I think.
I'm about to look.
One of the girls that we interviewed last week, hers is releasing on her sober date.
Wow.
Yeah, on it, yeah.
Yeah, it's actually on
the one that's coming out.
That's awesome.
The one that's coming out on
2 weeks before yours.
On the 6th is her sober date.
Yeah.
So
Melissa's is the Monday after.
22nd. And then the next one is the 29th. That's 2. And then the 6th, 13th. What'd you say your sober date was?
October 20th.
October 20th?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the day yours is coming out.
Yours is coming out on your sober date too.
The front door. That's crazy.
Isn't that funny how that works?
Wow.
Second
awesome.
one that's
That is so
happened
good.
with. That is so cool.
Yep.
Yeah, because she was asking us so that her son could watch it, and we started going over, and we were like, "Oh, it's gonna be such and such day." She goes, "Oh my God, are you serious?" And we were like, "Yeah, what?" And she's like, "Oh my God, that's my sober date." We were like, "Oh, well,
You know,
that's neat."
sometimes God just gives you little nods.
Yeah.
You know,
No, right?
like I know you're not seeing everything you want to see right now, but just like a wink,
You're on the
like
right track.
Yeah.
it's coming. It's coming. You're doing what I want you to
That's
do.
awesome.
That's really
As
cool. Oh, well, thank
will
you.
I be able to go back? Just a question. Will I be able to
Mhm.
like, go back and after it airs, will it be there for like anybody to watch if they want it?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's on YouTube, so you can watch as many times. Send
Yeah.
it. You can share it to people because it'll give you a link, and it just you can send it to whoever or
We
whatever.
also like we post I post a thing saying that it's live or not live, but that it's available.
Posted.
Yeah, it's posted and available now. And
Okay.
then for that entire week leading up to the following week's episode, I do little shorts. Like those shorts, I don't know if you see them on the page right now. Yeah.
Mhm.
I do that with everybody's episode. So we post that there's
Okay.
an entire episode, and then depending on how many shorts he makes, I'll do one episode a day, or like his and JJ's that just did, I had to do 2 episodes a day because
wow.
of how many or no, actually I think it's 3 episodes a day right now. Or short, sorry. It's 3 shorts a day right now because of how many his made. Sometimes they only make, I think the least amount's been what, 7?
3 or 4 on
Yeah.
some are 20.
Yeah. So
Depends.
it just depends on how many the software makes.
Has nothing to do with me. AI does it.
Yeah.
I just
So
Wow.
it just
download them.
yeah.
But yeah, so it'll
sorry. You'll have those that you can share as you want to. You can share the little bits and pieces of your story too as you want.
those go on like TikTok, Facebook, Instagram.
And what I do is I'll send you guys like actual links of your episode too, so that you
Okay.
already have it in your messenger and you can share it to whoever you want.
Yeah.
Awesome. Sounds good.
So yeah,
I
you'll
appreciate you guys.
yeah, we appreciate you. Thank you for
you.
taking the time and for sharing your story. And somehow our camera's screwing up, which is a good time to end.
All right. Sounds good.
Yeah, we're frozen. All right. All right. Thank you again. Have a good rest of your night.
Bye.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.